Okay, 5 minutes, really quick, on finance and the personal rule. What's the problem? Problem is that Charles is terminally short of cash. Charles begins his personal rule with no money. Why? Because Parliament hasn't granted him any money for the first 4 years of his reign, to all intents and purposes, because he has foreign policy debts thanks to Buckingham's ill-fated foreign policy adventures, and because he's inherited a legacy of debt from his profligate and financially reckless father. Big problem. How is it solved? Well, 3 things. We've got quick fixes. We've got ways in which cash is raised very quickly at the beginning of the personal rule to keep the regime afloat. Secondly, we've got ways of reducing expenditure, of cutting spending. And thirdly, we've got ways of setting the regime on a more stable financial footing. So, first of all, quick fixes. What are we talking about here? We're talking about ways of raising money immediately, quickly, to try to make sure that there is some money in the bank. What are we looking at here? We're looking at things like distraint of knighthood. What's that? It's a fine on people with estates worth £40 or more a year who did not present themselves to receive knighthood at the time of the king's coronation. Massive income, downside, sacrifices a lot of goodwill. It's seen as, well, what it is, which is basically the resuscitation of a long moribund statute that hasn't been in use really since what we now call the Middle Ages, the 13th, 14th centuries. Secondly, we've got forest laws. This links into the same phenomenon. This is going right back to the Middle Ages, in effect to when royal forests were large and with a preserve of the monarch to go and hunt deer, and legislation was introduced to fine people who did anything to encroach on the royal forest. By the time we get to the 17th century, deforestation has occurred, growth of towns means that a lot of settlements, a lot of estates are on what is in effect still technically royal forest. Large sums of money are raised by fining those that have encroached on royal forest. Downside, again, we're looking at a sacrifice of goodwill. Thirdly, we've got the sale of monopolies. What's a monopoly? A monopoly is the exclusive right to import and sell something, or to manufacture and sell something. What's the idea? The idea is that basically, if you have a monopoly on something, you're going to make a killing. You're the only person that can sell it. It is therefore a valuable thing to own. Hey, we could make a board game up along this line. What you want to do is you want to bid to have the monopoly, and then make sure that over the course of the length of the monopoly, you make back a lot of money. Very unpopular, because basically, what's a monopoly owner do? He charges a lot of money for low quality goods. He drives down costs, raises prices. But the Exchequer likes it because it gets a massive lump sum up front. Very politically unpopular though, not good for Charles. Similarly, wardship. Wardship is the idea that if somebody dies without a clear heir of a legal age, until that heir becomes able to take over the running of the estate can be run by the crown. Wardship was something that was expanded to estates that had never been deemed really worth considering before, and those estates were milked for every last penny. Again, sacrificing a lot of popularity. So that's the quick fixes. All well and good, we've got a bit of money in the bank now, we've sacrificed goodwill, but this can't go on forever. Once you find someone for distraint of knighthood, you can't keep fining them. So we need to find other ways of making sure financially we're running well. So, cut expenditure. This is the second big plank of finance in the personal rule. Credit is dealt with first of all. Particularly Juxon here, Bishop of London and Treasurer Weston, they find ways of cutting down the dependence on borrowing. They want to make sure that the Crown tries to live within its means more effectively. One of the ways they do this, again unpopular, is by making use of purveyance. What is purveyance? Purveyance is the right of the Crown traditionally to buy goods at below market price. What does Charles's team do? They expand purveyance. They make sure that they are getting more goods for less money than previously under the system. Again though, the downside of this is that a lot of popularity is sacrificed. So these are quick fixes and ways of dealing with the financial situation by cutting spending. We've got to think then about the longer term ways the personal rule can be funded, because Charles has resolved in 1629 to rule long term without Parliament. What have we got? Well, we've got 2 main planks to the way in which Charles is going to finance his rule longer term. We've got trade, first of all. One of the key cuts of expenditure that I didn't mention was that foreign wars are cut. Peace is made with France and Spain. And once peace with France and Spain has been signed, trade with those countries develops once again. The increase of trade means that tonnage and poundage, which technically speaking Charles isn't allowed to collect, it was only granted for the first year of his reign, but he's ignoring that. Tonnage and poundage, basically tax on imports, is a major boon for the Exchequer. Trade really increases through the personal rule. Year after year, the incomes from trade increase. It's a major plank that enables the personal rule to fund itself. The second big thing we're looking at is ship money. Now, ship money and trade go hand in hand. Why? Because ship money is levied to provide for a navy that protects the seas, that enables this trade to work. So ship money is probably best understood as a way of guaranteeing the long-term benefits of tonnage and poundage taxes on trade. Initially, ship money is taxed on coastal counties. This is all well and good, except for the fact that traditionally ship money is only levied in a time of emergency, when there is a real threat overseas, like 1588 in Armada. Now, Charles can swing it that there are pirates out in the English Channel, but when, as we get basically to 1635-36, and the decision is taken to expand ship money inland, things get a little bit more difficult. Now, on the one hand, here's the case that, hey, look, expansion in trade, the benefits of seas without pirates, they are felt by inland counties. Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire sees the benefit of seas free of pirates in lower prices just as much as a coastal county like Devon does. Why should it just be Devon that pays? But it's a new precedent. It's a precedent that a lot of people in inland counties are not happy with, and therefore it's challenged. Now, financially, ship money is in many respects a tremendous success. The income it brings is very, very considerable. We're looking at significant sums. But on the downside, there's a massive expenditure of political capital for Charles. So, finance and the personal rule. What are we looking at here? We're looking at quick fixes, lots of initial income, but at the cost of goodwill. We're looking at real ways to reorganise the finances of the personal rule, reorganise the royal finances to cut costs. Pretty successful. And we're looking at ways to find long-term stability financially. Ship money, in the effect, becomes a kind of direct tax, but its popularity is, at best dubious, and it's challenged by people like Hampden. The big plank underlying this is the increase in trade and the revenues from trade. So, first little mini video, Miley Cyrus, etc. Watch out, because this is going to go viral, I'm sure of it.